You know, the device you're watching this on, whether it's in your hand or on your desk, is literally millions of times more powerful than the machines that helped win world wars and send people to the moon. So how on earth did we get here? Well, today we're going on that exact journey, charting the computer's almost impossible path from a 30-ton behemoth to the powerhouse in your pocket. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start way back, even before the microchip, with this ancient human need to calculate things. Then we'll meet the absolute giants, the mainframes. After that, the revolution that put a PC on every desk. And finally, we'll land right where we are today, in the pocket-sized future.
To really get your head around this, let's just start with a quick thought experiment. I want you to picture a computer. Okay, got it? Now, imagine that computer weighs 30 tons. That's heavier than a humpback whale. What does a machine like that even look like? And what could it possibly do?
Well, that 30-ton machine was very real. It was called ENIAC. Built back in 1946, it filled an entire apartment-sized room and could crank out about 5,000 operations a second. Now, compare that to your smartphone. It weighs less than half a pound and performs billions of operations per second. That leap, right there, from the size of a room to the palm of your hand, from thousands to billions, that's the engine that created our entire modern world.
You see, this whole story doesn't start with electricity or silicon. It starts with a really basic human problem. We need to count stuff. I mean, for thousands of years, whether it was for keeping track of harvests, collecting taxes, or figuring out where the stars are, we've always been looking for better, faster ways to crunch numbers. For centuries, that drive gave us all these clever mechanical solutions. You had the ancient abacus, then the gear and lever Pascaline in the 1600s. But these were really just single-purpose calculators. It wasn't until the 1830s that a guy named Charles Babbage imagined something truly game-changing, the analytical engine. This wasn't just a calculator. It was a blueprint for a general-purpose machine. You could give it different instructions to solve different problems, and boom! The idea of a computer was born. But the technology just wasn't there yet. The world would have to wait. For Babbage's dream to actually happen, we had to ditch the moving parts. And the 20th century gave us the key: electricity. This is where the story shifts from creaky gears to silent circuits. And believe me, the pace of innovation is about to go into overdrive.
Think about it. A mechanical gear has a speed limit. You can only turn it so fast before it breaks. The huge breakthrough was realizing we could stop moving things and start moving something with no weight that moves at nearly the speed of light, electrons. But to control those electrons, you needed a totally new kind of switch.
And those first electronic computers were mainframes, absolute giants. I mean, picture a machine filling a massive air-conditioned room, operated not by you or me, but by a whole team of specialists in lab coats. These electronic brains were used by governments for huge, singular jobs, like calculating missile trajectories or processing the national census. They were incredibly powerful, but completely, totally out of reach for regular people. The core technology that made all this possible? The vacuum tube. Just think of it as a little glass light bulb that could act as an on-off switch. ENIAC used about 18,000 of them. The problem was, they were huge, they got incredibly hot, and they burned out all the time. It made the computers wildly unreliable. Something smaller, cooler, and more dependable had to be found. And that desperate need for a better switch brings us to the real turning point. This is the revolution in miniature. This is the moment computing power breaks out of the lab and begins its journey into our homes and onto our desks. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The next great leap forward wasn't just about raw power. It was about making that power small. To actually change the world, computers had to get cheaper, more reliable, and small enough for a normal person to own and use. The real revolution was all about shrinking. So how did they do it? Well, it happened in two huge leaps. First, in 1947, the transistor was invented. It did everything that big, hot vacuum tube did, but it was a tiny, solid piece of material. Then, in 1958, came the next stroke of absolute genius, the integrated circuit. The thinking was, instead of wiring thousands of individual transistors together, why not just
print them all at once onto a single, tiny sliver of silicon.
This incredible process of shrinking and combining led directly to the microprocessor in the 1970s. And this is the magic ingredient. For the very first time, all of the core parts of a computer's brain could be put onto a single chip. And once you have a computer on a chip, you can build a computer for a person.
And the result? It was an explosion. Just look at this. In 1980, having a personal computer was super rare. Only about 1 million households in the US had one. By the year 2000, that number shot up to over 50 million. The microprocessor didn't just create a new gadget, it kicked off a whole new era. The digital age had officially moved in.
Which brings us to the final stage of our journey, at least so far, the one that ends with that incredibly powerful computer you carry around with you every single day.
So what was the last piece of this puzzle? It was all about convergence. It was about taking the power of that personal computer, linking it to the incredible global resource of the internet, and then doing the impossible, squeezing all of that into the shape of a telephone.
Just stop and think about it for a second. 20, 30 years ago, you needed a separate camera for photos. You needed a paper map or a clunky GPS unit for directions. You needed a Walkman or an MP3 player for music, and of course, a telephone. Now, all of those things, plus a computer that's way more powerful than any desktop from back then, they all live in your pocket. It's the ultimate result of that obsessive drive to make things smaller and smaller. So let's bring this all home. Remember old ENIAC from the beginning? Chugging along at 5,000 operations a second? Well, a modern smartphone can perform over 1 trillion operations in that same single second. That's not just a little better, it's a change so massive it's almost impossible to even comprehend.
So that's the story. In the span of a single human lifetime, we took a machine that weighed 30 tons and filled a room, and we put it in our pocket, making it billions of times more powerful along the way. It is one of the most stunning technological achievements in all of human history, which, of course, leaves us with one final mind-bending question. We went from the room to the pocket. What's the next impossible leap?